Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien here on the morning of Monday, August 28th, 2023. Stand by for a very special and personal commentary. Well, I've been listening to some of my cohorts here at YouTube channel who specialize in videos on songs and explanations of them, and they, for the most part, looked like they were generation late millennials, early Z's, 1990 and over people, and mostly of African American descent. And this is a disclaimer to you guys on YouTube and Facebook. Yo-ho! I am not being anti this, or as you called it, hate speech and all the other stuff that you accuse me of. I've never done that here, and I never will. But I have to explain to my cohorts on YouTube who have a question on one thing here. When you do a song from other generations, you got to research it really dear and explain it to your generation. You guys try to explain based on the way your generation perceives the world a special song. The song that a lot of you in the last year have tried to explain, and 90% of you in this YouTube channels are African American. You know who I mean. Just look at the YouTube channel, you people that rush through YouTube here, and you see these guys. They do a good job. I'm not complaining about their jobs. I'm just saying that you have to be diligent on what you do. And the song in question was recorded in 1971. It was actually written back in 1959 by a gentleman who, let's see, what was his last name? Rottermill was his last name. Milk, pardon me. And recorded by a lot of different artists, including some Native Americans, or as he referred to them as Indians. Okay. I'm also Central American Indian descent from Toltec. So I understand these guys. But anyway, the group in question was a pretty good known group in the 60s, although nobody knew how to classify them. Paul Revere and the Raiders. 1971, they took this song to #1 in the U.S. And a lot of people didn't understand the songs even in 1971. And there was always, like you say, African American cohorts here in YouTube. I know a guy and a girl, I forget what your name were, but you have a channel here, and you must be, 30 and under, 1990 at least, not older than that. And you called it maybe a war song. Wow, no. What I'm talking about is Indian Reservation by Paul Revere and the Raiders. The song is a history of the Cherokee Nation. And the way Paul Revere sings it is in reverence to what they went through. It is not meant to be a war song. And the reason why you say war songs, my pals from YouTube, is they recorded it in 1971. And it had a lot of different effect on people at the time. Some people took it the wrong way, and it was blamed a year later for the Wounded Knee disaster of 1972 with the FBI. Oh boy, that was a disaster. But really, that song had nothing to do with it. It had people that used it as that. Kind of like what Donald J. Trump and Joseph Biden are trying to do with the American people today. In the song, it tells you from start to finish what happened to the Cherokee Nation. There are some good parts and some sad parts and some really parts of the American Europeans, the white people as you call them, would really want to bury, okay? Because they were bad, extremely bad. So you see, African Americans, you're not the only ones that suffer. The Japanese suffered under 9066 in World War II. The Indians suffered under Andrew Jackson in the 1830s. You suffered for 150 years or so, meaning African Americans. The Chinese have always, the Asians have always suffered besides the Japanese, all other Asians, by being slanted-eyed and second class and looked on as morons. Same as the Indians, savages. And you African Americans as, you don't have any intelligence. So, it's not only you, it goes all over the place. And this is the problem with America. Okay? And I'm not being hate speech here, YouTube and Facebook. Listen to what I'm saying. It's not a hate thing. It's a reality thing. The problem with America here is that it doesn't have a culture. And if you listen to the song of Paul Revere and the Raiders, Indian Reservation, and a lot of you cohorts from me from YouTube have asked this question. What does he mean by the Cherokee Nation will return? And you have to go back to the old Indians way back before you were even slaves here in the United States, African American, because they got, and my ancestors go back thousands of years. And the first time in all of your Indians nations in North America and Central and South America have the same type stories, varies from place to place, but it's basically the same thing. In my home tribe in Panama, which are descendants and offshoots of Toltec, our old folks tells us that our ancestors a long, long time ago, thousands and thousands of years, met the sky people. Not gods, sky people. They came down and instilled in our ancestors a love of the land and a love of people. And you got to understand, if you're a more advanced civilization talking to a less advanced civilization, and they were far advanced. I mean, in order to come to the earth, you were more advanced than what we are today. And according to my tribe, at least, they come from a star called Mintaka, which is in the Orion Belt. Other tribes, their sky people come from other things. Sirius, some from the other two stars in Orion. It depends on who you talk to. The Hopi will tell you something different. The Navajo will tell you something different. The Cherokee will tell you something different. The Aztecs will tell you something different. The Inca will tell you something different as far as the sky people. But basically the thing is the same. They teach us the meaning of treasuring the land and the place you are, and you are just a caretaker. You don't own it. You can't pass it on to your descendants. You just take care of it. Your descendants take your place when you pass away, and you take care of it. And that's what Paul Revere is trying to say when he said the Cherokee Nation will return. Because as he says in the song, if you listen to the lyrics, they had to give up their tomahawks. They had to give up their way of life. They had to give up their way of thinking, which they didn't. But boy, the American white people, as you call them, African Americans, tried their darndest to wipe it off the face of the map. They made them learn English. They made them go to European schools. They made them try to assimilate to a European white culture, which you cannot do. A lot of civilizations from Europe have learned this. You couldn't do this. Heck, even the Egyptians and the Sumerians and their descendants knew this. One example is Akhenaten from the Egyptians. He tried to make everybody believe in monotheism away from polytheism because he wanted to will it, and that's not the way to do it. It took centuries for you to become a monotheistic people. And our tribes, no matter if you're from North, Central, or South America, our gods are not the way the European gods were in the old days. They were sky people who tried to teach us lessons. Something that the Europeans never learned and are paying dearly for it. Here in America, you're paying dearly because you don't have an American culture. And as Paul Revere says, the Cherokee Nation will return. And if you look at the Cherokee Nation, it was probably almost decimated in the 1920. There's a lot of tribes, Navajo, Arapaho, Sioux, and they can tell you that some of them were down to 20 of their tribe. And they had to survive, and sure, they mixed with other tribes, so they're not 100% tribes anymore, but you're still 100% Indians if you mixed with another tribe. Just like you African Americans. Your ancestors came from some place in Africa, but you're not that ancestor anymore. Your tribe has mixed with others from another, say, East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa. You're still got the black color, but you're not that person's ancestor who came in originally. You got mixtures. Same with the Central American, North American, South American Indians. They're not 100% what they used to be. But they're still 100% Native Americans because they are still Indians and your culture survived. Some of the cultures that you have here are a combination of Sioux, Arapaho, Navajo, and they're still Indians. And the culture has adapted their dogma to accept these people in them. At first you didn't. And my term for where I come from, because I was not all 100% Indian, was half-breed. And there's a lot of you that are either certain percent this, certain percent that, and the tribes would say you were a half-breed. And so would the white Americans. That's what they would tell you, half-breeds. But they didn't know, and that is the culture that Paul Revere was talking about in the song Indian Reservation, that sooner or later the culture will return. Because the love of the land is what saves the earth, not the ownership of the land. Your European culture has to change. If you want to become still American, you're going to have to adopt the North American Indian culture, the Asian culture, the African American culture, the Latin culture, all the people that you brought in to this country, you have to adapt that and form an American/human culture with emphasis in human. Because that's the only culture that will survive on this planet, is the humanity culture, which you haven't got yet. And you're running out of time to develop it, because whether you're African American, whether you're Indian, whether you're white European, whether you're Asian or Latin, Spanish, or Australian aborigine, or whatever you are, Japanese, Chinese, there is a race out there that hates you with a passion because you are human. And they got a long-standing disgust of you that goes back millennia. And when they see you, they want to wipe you off the face of this planet and wipe the planet off the face of the universe, because they hate this planet. It was bad to them, even though they were native from this planet. Therefore, my cohorts in YouTube, who are trying to explain Paul Revere's Indian Reservation, you have a lot more search to do to explain that song. Paul Revere did a good job on that song. It's one of the better songs I've heard since I've been here in 1970. And it explains your human culture like no other thing I've heard so far. This is your favorite alien. Good day.